Hare Krishna. So for first question, should women in general be encouraged to take up different professions and become part of the market force?
Well, that's an interesting question. Things have changed a lot over the last century, we can say. That previously, practically all over the world, women primarily were homemakers because the children needed love and attention naturally, and the man, having the more physical strength, would go out and work to support the family in the workplace or out on the farm plowing, or if they were living in an agrarian situation. And the women would assist in some of the agrarian activity, but primarily they would be homemakers. And the benefit of that is that sense gratification can more easily be reduced when there is not free mixing of male and female. So in today's society, with the women being active participants in the workforce, we are simply increasing the sense gratification, which is taking us farther away from the opportunity to go back to Godhead. This is the main problem. This topic can be spoken about at length, but the general principle always given is that if you mix fire and butter together, the butter will melt. So if you throw in the workforce men and women mixing freely, then naturally we will see the divorce rate rise. We will see families broken up. We will see children's lives completely disturbed by divorce. And it will create so many social problems. Even in India in 1977, when I came for the first time, there was not one woman I could ever see in the shop in Vrindavan, in Agra, in all of those places. Maybe in the big city they were there in the shops selling to the men. But you will not find them in many villages practically. The women are all homemakers. They're all arranging for the necessities for the family by preparing the food in a natural way that's grown locally, and taking care of the milk. The women were churning the milk. All of these food products and things are required for the human's health. So that was their natural dharma. And so from my point of view, it will simply create a more sinful life, and we are wanting to reduce the fever of sense gratification. So I'm a strong advocate of the woman being a homemaker, like my wife has been for all of these years. 35 years of marriage, she never worked outside, never had a job outside. I was able to handily support her and the children. And it's actually a better way of life if you're concerned about advancing spiritually. Otherwise, if you're interested in sense gratification, throw them all together in the pot and let us see what happens.
Why did Srila Prabhupada say that women need not attend the Varnasrama college?
Similar to the answer that I just gave, Varnashram college Prabhupada had in mind was for training primarily Brahmins and Kshatriyas. And when Satsvarup asked Srila Prabhupada in February 1977 who would attend these Varnashram colleges in all of our ISKCON centers, Prabhupada said our devotees will. And then the question came around from Satsvarup, well, will your female disciples, the ladies, ISKCON devotees, will they also be part of this Varnashram college? Prabhupada said no, they will do all the cooking and stitching and all of those kind of things. And the men will be trained in the college. And the reason was the same principle, that the natural leader of society is the man. Prabhupada is very clear on this point if you study. Man is the natural leader in society. In the individual family, the husband is the natural guru to the wife and the children. And in the greater society, the larger context of society, the natural leader is the man. The woman plays a very critical role in the life of the man as support for him. And even in Krishna's situation in Dwarka with all the queens, they were managing affairs of the palace they were living in. But Krishna was the one going to the sabha and dealing with all the politics of the day. And the women were staying in their palaces and seeing that everything is going on nicely by their management. But they weren't working on the outside.
What is the role of traditional Gurukula, and why within ISKCON have we not promoted the establishment of such Gurukulas?
The role of the Gurukula is to develop character in the student. That is the primary role of Gurukula. Nowadays in education, character is not even considered. The administrators of various schools could care less about the character of the students. Education has become a business, big business.
Yeah.
Earning crores of rupees here in India for sure in these private universities. But Gurukula is meant for the development of character. Because after all, our goal is to go back to Godhead, not to simply learn some shopagyan, some material knowledge, so that we can go out and earn money and have so many fancy things. The goal of education is to teach one that we are all Krishna's eternal servant. We are designed by Krishna to love and relish our relationship with Him. And that has become less and less important. So Gurukula should be there to establish Krishna conscious character. So some ABCD education Prabhupada wanted the children to have, but primarily he wanted them to become devotees, lovers of Krishna. And by their awakening their love for Krishna, they would have the spiritual potency to benefit so many other people by their good association. So Gurukula is meant for creating preachers who can uplift society so that the fallen conditioned souls suffering in this world will have a great opportunity to go back to Godhead and have a panacea for all of the challenges that they're facing in their life.
Anything you wanted to comment on, like why within ISKCON have we not promoted the establishment of such Gurukulas?
I would say that the main problem there, the main reason we haven't, is we haven't given our best people to run the Gurukulas. Especially if you go back to the 70s, the basic principle was if the person was really good at book distribution and collection and bringing in money, you would never think of putting them as a teacher in the Gurukula. But someone who is showing lack of capability, maybe he's a nice devotee, but he's not really that capable as some other devotees in many facets, then they think, well, just stick him in there. He'll be fine, I'm sure. They don't give the best man. They should give the best devotees, the most intelligent, the most sincere. Those should be the ones that are actually raising these young people to become Krishna conscious. And that was never, somehow or another, that never became the guiding principle of Gurukula. They would put people in a position that they felt was not going to condemn or interfere with what they thought was more important. We didn't give proper attention to the role of children. And Prabhupada wanted them to be loved. He wanted them to be taught to become devotees. And we didn't understand that principle very clearly. We had a lot of financial thoughts in our minds as devotees that we want to bring in a substantial amount of money for the running of our institution. And we shortchanged the children in many cases.
How important are villages, and why is ISKCON much less involved with village development?
The importance of village life is for the sake of simplicity. Village life in general means a more simple life. And when I say simple, I also mean it's a more pure life, because we are living in the lap of nature when we're living in a village. We're not surrounded by 50 or 60 or 80 story, cement buildings. And we're not having our health being hampered by the amazing number of cars that are choking the city streets and spewing out all of these nasty chemicals from the tailpipe of the car. You have a much cleaner environment. You have a much simpler way of living. Instead of working hard in some big corporation which can transfer you at any time to the other side of the world and uproot your family, the village life is one where people ideally live in the same environment their entire life. and they depend on Krishna. Prabhupada would say that we should live in the lap of nature and simply depend on Krishna. So instead of working for dollars and then taking the dollars and purchasing the things we need, village life generally means producing your own necessities. Even in India, India had problems with Mughals coming into India to try to take over the country. They wanted to run India as their own, rule over India. But the village people, they really, to a large degree, didn't care about the particular people who came in to try to conquer India, because their life was a self-sufficient life. There wasn't all of this massive transportation that we have today in terms of shipping products. They simply produced from what nature was giving, everything they need, the basic necessities. They were happy to live simple, and because they lived simple, they were able to have extra time to become Krishna conscious. And that was Prabhupada's promise to us, that we would live simply and think more about our spiritual life, then we could produce the necessities we need. We would have extra time outside of planting and harvesting time, where we could hear about Krishna, chant his holy names, and associate together in the spirit of glorification of the Lord, so we could make more rapid advancement. So they're a very important aspect, although all over the world they seem to be dwindling because of the modernization of the world. But we are not interested in following the ways created by the karmis in this world. We have our own view of what is the purpose of life, and that is to leave this material world and go back to our original home in Krishna Loka. So we're going to always have a propensity to have a different lifestyle than the materialistic people who simply want to enjoy unlimited sense gratification.
Is it really so important to return to what is called traditional occupation? If so, why?
Well, this is similar to the last question. Traditional occupation was that the necessities of life will be supplied. How many of us really require all of these red, white, and blue, and purple, and orange plastic toys and things that are coming from China and all these other places? Are those businesses that are exporting those things supplying us with things that we have a requirement for, really? Everywhere you look, even in India, this is called Punya Bhumi. Everywhere you go, even along the outskirts of the temple, there are so many, we were talking earlier about this, there are so many little booths, and practically speaking, everything is some plastic thing that is not required. It's coming from the oil. They're making it from sucking the oil out of the ground, and they're using that residue from making the gasoline and the oil for plastic products, and they're making all of these things which are not at all required. Our needs are very less. If we count our basic needs, they're very less. So traditional life again means a simple life, a life of producing our own necessities. Prabhupada used to say, we cannot eat nuts and bolts. Or nowadays we would say, we cannot eat computer chips. You cannot have those for dinner. We need the basic necessities supplied to us. And traditional life and village life saw to it that the basic necessities were supplied and people were satisfied. It's Madison Avenue that's causing all the mental stress on people. Madison Avenue means that's where the biggest advertising agencies in the world are, and they bring in all of their psychology students from the biggest universities. The psychology students understand human mind, supposedly, so with their training in psychology, they teach the people on Madison Avenue in the advertising world how to appeal to people, to get them to think their life will not be satisfactory unless they buy this or that product. So Madison Avenue or advertisers are always trying to increase their wealth. They don't think at all, they don't give any concern about the needs of the people, because they're simply filled with greed, and they're trying to sell any widget thing that they can advertise and make profit for themselves and satisfy their customers. But we have a different idea. In the Bhagavatam it's described, we were just reading it today, Shukadeva Goswami said, the intelligent person should endeavor for the minimum necessities of life, not for the maximum number of things that we can own and possess, but we should endeavor for the minimum necessities of life while we're living in this world of names. Everything here is temporary. There's not one item in this material world made of this dull matter that is going to exist eternally. It all will appear and disappear in its shape. So we are not interested as devotees to collect material things. We're interested in becoming Krishna conscious, loving Krishna. So if we live simple, we'll have extra time to think of Krishna, to glorify Krishna, to associate with devotees. We'll make more rapid progress, and we'll actually achieve the highest perfection of human life. Therefore, we are very different than we will find the typical non-devotee today.
So any comment on Srila Prabhupada's statement like 50% of his mission is unfulfilled about establishing Varnasrama? So
yeah, I can say that Prabhupada's mood was clearly he understood that the goal of life is not Varnashram. That is not the goal of life. The Varnashram is a bridge to get to where the soul wants to go to. We want to go out of this Bhavasagar, this world of birth and death. We want to go back to Krishna Loka. That is the goal. So Varnashram is a means to cross over this great ocean of material existence. And that is what Prabhupada's mood was. He wanted everyone to be elevated so that they could go back to the spiritual world and live eternally with Krishna where we all belong. So this is the real essence of Varnashram. So Varnashram means that Krishna has arranged Chaturvarnya Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. He's arranged for these spiritual divisions and these occupational divisions so that society can function smoothly. When society is functioning smoothly, then there's greater prospect for spiritual upliftment. Whenever the quarreling and the different problems that are found in society are minimized, then people's minds are more peaceful. And when their minds are peaceful, then they have a much better opportunity to become more spiritually aware and ultimately to achieve the highest perfection, which is to return to our original abode with Krishna in the spiritual world. So Prabhupada, the 50% that he didn't get done was really the full establishment of Varnas and ashrams. He began more than anything else with the ashrams. He began with marrying people. He married his disciples back in the 60s when he first started ISKCON in 66, 67. So that was part of the spiritual side of things. And then gradually he introduced his brahmachari ashram, and then he introduced sannyas ashram. So he didn't speak that much about vanaprastha ashram, but basically he was establishing the ashrams. And then now these occupations, they're also meant for the people with different caliber of intelligence. The Brahmins are the highly intelligent people. Therefore, they were mostly influenced by the mode of goodness, and they were the head of society. We all know Prabhupada used to use that example. The Kshatriyas were fearless and determined and had so many qualities so that they could be the protector of society, and they were, Prabhupada would use the example of the arms as the Kshatriyas. The Vaishyas were inclined for mercantile activity, especially Goraksha, protecting the cows, and for cultivation of foods which are required for everyone in society has to eat. And also some little business transaction, banking and things can be there for the Vaishyas. And Shudras, of course, were not qualified by their particular mode of nature they were under, so therefore they were ready to serve the other three castes. So these are the things that Prabhupada wanted to establish, but the purpose, the 50% that he wanted to get done, was to lay the groundwork for spirituality. If the groundwork is not there for spirituality, then what is the hope that people will go back to Godhead? So Varnashram is the bridge. A bridge is something that you use to cross from one side to get to the other place that you want to go to. So Varnashram is the bridge to take us from this side of the Bhavasagar to the far side of it into the spiritual world. To cross the ocean of material existence, in other words, and go back to Godhead. Varnashram is hopeful for that. And that he didn't find the time to, his time was short, 11 years with us, so he didn't find the time to fully establish that. But he wanted it, and he wants us to do that. So building that bridge simply means everyone doing according to their natural tendency and capacity, and with the idea in mind of loving Krishna. So in Bhagavatam it clearly states that one who engages in Varnashram but does not try to love Krishna, it's called Srama Eva Hi Kevalam. He's simply wasting his time because Krishna is not in the center. Krishna has to be in the center for actual spiritual progress to take place.
Yes,
Hare Krishna. So I'll just share a little bit with the devotees about our experience in married life. We got married and had 2 children when we were living in Southern California. I had opened a small temple and it was growing. The congregation was growing regularly. But the problem that we faced was we were living in Los Angeles and the air was practically unbreathable. It was so much congestion from all of the millions of cars and all of the exhaust and the industry that we weren't even feeling healthy. We were having physical problems from just breathing the air. So we moved to Northern California. We spent some time there, out in the countryside. And then after some years, we got a nice invitation from a good friend who had moved to the East Coast. He had moved to North Carolina on the eastern seaboard. And one of the devotees had purchased 350 acres of land way out in the countryside. Rolling hills, quite beautiful, studded with mature trees and streams and rivers. A beautiful place. So we went out for a visit. We became excited about the idea of shifting from the West Coast out to this. We called it Prabhupada Village, was the name of it. And my son practically demanded that we move there because he met some of the other young boys and they were all riding their bicycles up and down the hills. And my son came in one day during our visit there and said, Pita, you can go back to California if you want, I'm staying here. He liked it very much. So we drove back and we made a decision that we would come back, and we've had a 5-acre parcel of land we wanted to buy. So we returned with some few possessions we had and a long list of things that we wanted to practice while we were there on the level of self-sufficiency. We weren't really talking about establishing Varnashram, but living out in the countryside, we thought, why don't we try to become as self-sufficient as possible? So we grew organic produce there, right in the front yard, just 20 feet from the front door, so that you couldn't avoid it. It was right there as soon as you walked out of the house. So we grew very nice fresh vegetables to cook and offer to Krishna. We planted various fruit trees, the best of which was an amazing fig tree that produced thousands of figs every October. August and September were the months. And we got sheep. We got 2 sheep, and my wife and daughter, my son would shear them once a year, and wife and daughter would spin the wool into yarn, and from that they could make socks and various things. So there was that endeavor was there. And then we surprised everyone in the village when we met a person nearby who had some tarparkar, which is an indigenous breed in India to Rajasthan, the state of Rajasthan. Beautiful, long, lop-eared cows, quite large in size, generally white, with gigantic humps and very long, like rabbit ears that they would slap the flies with and everything. And so we got a 12-week-old calf and raised her. And when she was 3 years old, we bred her to a purebred Tarparkar bull who lived about 2 hours away. We dropped her off there for 2 months, and she was impregnated by the bull there. We brought her back. And 9 or 10 months later, a little Abai Charan was born. We gave him that name, Abai Charan. He was a red-colored calf initially, and this was typical from that bull. The calf would start out with red-colored hairs all over his body, and after 1 year, it would all turn white somehow or other. So he became a very big fellow and a fan of everyone. He was very gentle. So this wonderful oxen we had, it was too cold. It was getting so cold that practically his brain was being numbed. We had a barn for him, and we had 3 pastures to move him around and about in. But the temperature was getting so cold, it was really stunning him. So we had a good friend bring her truck up and trailer him down to Florida, and he's very happily living with all the devotees there next to the Alachua temple. We went to see him recently after about 1.5 years or 2 years not being able to be in touch with him. When we went to USA last time, we went to greet him, and I just called him from the fence, and he immediately knew who I was and ran over, and we fed him and petted him and loved on him. So we had that good experience of raising the mother and her son, and we were happy. We were trying to live very simple. Our basic idea was to follow the principle that Prabhupada initiated, that we should try to have simple living and high thinking. So we wanted to minimize the necessities of life and live simple. But I found out, after building the house and not having sufficient funds to pay for all the materials initially, I had a sizable amount of money that I had to repay for having bought all those materials to build the house. It wasn't palatial at all, but it was a nicely built farmhouse suitable to that environment. So then I formed a business, and then I ended up not being there that much. I was traveling to Europe back and forth and doing my business on the east coast of the United States. So the self-sufficiency aspect of it suffered during those years when I was earning money to repay the banks for money that I had borrowed to build the house. Fortunately, I earned nicely by Krishna's grace in my business, paid off all the debts, and was able to save some Lakshmi, which I subsequently transferred here to India. We've been living here for the last 6 years. And so we have a strong feeling within the heart that living close to nature is pleasing to Krishna, and it also has a great effect on the devotees, because if we can learn to live simple and dispassionately, then our Krishna consciousness will flourish more. Srila Prabhupada said that one who works close to home and has no debt can live a very peaceful life. So if we could try to establish these farm communities, then we can experience practically that growing your own food. Prabhupada said it's 100 times better to cook and offer to Krishna food that you've grown locally than it is to buy it from the marketplace. And it's absolutely true. If we used to go out and cut the lady fingers, 30 or 40 of these lady fingers, and bring them in and wash them and immediately cook them and offer to Krishna and honor them. And they tasted so much better than anything you could find purchasing in the marketplace, which has been sitting around for some number of days in the dusty atmosphere of the city. So anyway, this simple living and high thinking is close to our heart. And we often now in India travel to some of these places, some of the farms where devotees are doing their best to try to establish this lifestyle of simple living and high thinking. We're supportive of that, and when possible we give donations to support these type of projects for building the necessary simple infrastructures on these farm communities. So anyway, that is something that Prabhupada wanted to see, that we trust in Krishna by living in the lap of this material nature and seeing that the bounty that nature will provide us with is going to be sufficient. In the Bhagavatam it's described that the land will produce all the necessities of life. This is in the first canto. It's described that all the necessities of life will come from the land. So if we just trust in Krishna and try to live as simple as possible, that will give us the enthusiasm to hear and chant more, and not being pressured by the current of materialistic life today, which is pushing everyone to earn more money with the idea in mind of having more material possessions, which they promise in their advertising is going to really make you happy, but it's a bunch of, it's a crock. It's just really a made-up concept because people are interested in becoming wealthy by selling unnecessary or unneeded things. So simple living and high thinking should be advocated more and more. I can tell you honestly that Palini Devi and I live in a simple flat in Udupi, which is a very, very small city. We don't have a car or a motorcycle or even a bicycle. We don't have a refrigerator. We don't even have a mixie in the kitchen. There's no question of a television. We live very, very simple. We have very simple cane furniture, which is just plucked out of the forest, and they make very simple chairs and bedding to lie on. Our altar for the deities is on this simple wood cane furniture. So we have a very simple life, and it's a very peaceful life. And traveling all over India and chanting and speaking here and there is the most ecstatic thing that we've done in our 43 years, and we want to do it until the final breath. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna.